So a couple years back, I made a video called Halo Mobile Sucks, which actually did fairly well at the time. I think it had to do with the fact that it said Halo Mobile above anything else, but the game was pretty awful with trash gameplay, a story that made no sense, and a ton of bugs that made the game not only harder to play, but at some points downright unplayable. What I found out shortly after releasing that video is that a Halo mobile game, Halo Spartan Assault, actually has a sequel called Halo Spartan Strike, or more rather a game with similar style, gameplay, made by the same studio. Although in terms of story, the games have no plot relevance to each other at all. This game is so much more interesting to me than the first game for all the wrong reasons. It manages to improve in so many ways where the first game did, but manages to falter where the first didn't. So without wasting any more of your time, let's jump straight into the gameplay. Oh yeah, and also spoilers ahead. Not that any of you cared anyway.
We're not going.
So the gameplay is actually pretty similar to the first game. It's a twin-stick shooter with added mechanics like grenades and ability pickups, like the bubble shield and teleporting. If you want a more in-depth look at the gameplay, I'd recommend watching my first Halo Mobile Sucks video, link at the top of the description. But this game actually expands heavily on the first game's weapons with not only the addition of Promethean weapons, but also some UNSC weapons like the battle rifle and grenade launcher. And these weapons aren't just reskins of previous weapons either. They all have their own rates of fire, spread patterns, ranges. It makes it really feel like an actual Halo game. Same thing goes for enemies. Once again, there's the addition of Promethean enemies with a total of 4 variants, including the Promethean Hunters, Crawlers, Watchers, and Turrets, each with their own sub-variants to make them a little bit more interesting, which are actually very easy to distinguish from each other. It doesn't mean they're fun to fight though. People largely hate the Prometheans in Halo 4, and it works about the same way in this game as well. The Hunter's teleportation isn't nearly as annoying as it is in Halo 4, but I also wish it just didn't exist at all. The Watchers are constantly respawning the Hunters, which is annoying as fuck, since there can be 5 on the field at once, and trying to focus and take down all of them can be a pain in the ass. But by far, the most goddamn annoying enemy of them all are those dumbass turrets that have health bars the size of Nikocado avocado. They also deal a ton of damage, so when there's like 2 or 3 of them on the field at once, they can shred your health absurdly fast. But on the plus side, there's the inclusion of Brute Chieftains, who are uncommon and only appear with the last few missions of the game, but their health is beefy, their gravity hammer lunge is fast and intimidating, but unfortunately you can't pick up the gravity hammer because you would have to make a new animation for that, and God forbid these guys put in more work. But other than that, they're really cool. They're enemies that don't overstay their welcome, and I like that. Unfortunately, in terms of mission and level design, it's actually quite a step back. The game is split up into 4 quarters, each with about 5 missions in each quarter. And at first, I was actually quite surprised during the first quarter of the game, since the level design was interesting and varied. The backgrounds had a ton of shit going on, and it always felt like something was happening. I've also been told there are a few references to Halo 2, since this first area takes place in New Mombasa during the original invasion. But the second and third quarters, so like half the fucking game, takes place on this Gamma Halo ring, and it's really just small and linear areas that aren't a whole lot of fun to go through. Where the first quarter was intense city shit fighting going on, the second and third quarters are just trees and vines and sometimes like Promethean structures. It's not really interesting. There's like nothing going on the entire time. The mission design itself in this game is actually super similar to Destiny 1's vanilla campaign, which honestly really surprised me and I thought was kind of funny. Let me explain. A lot of the missions are standing in a spot and defending against enemies. The fights aren't super difficult or engaging for the most part, with only the last few missions having a much larger difficulty curve since they just flood the areas with enemies, especially the ones you have to defend. But the defending in this game is amplified way too much at the end of the game. It basically becomes the only fucking thing you do half the time. There is a level in the last quarter of this game that requires you to defend the exact same point 3 separate fucking times. On top of that, something I really liked in Halo Spartan Assault was the tank missions that added a sense of scale to everything and made the entire experience feel more like a war instead of running through a forest fighting aliens and alien robots the majority of the time. The vehicle areas were interesting and there was a lot of shit going on. You could fight other vehicles the whole time and you had these big tanks that you could drive in. It was easily the most memorable and fun part of that entire game, and this game doesn't include it at all. In contrast, the vehicle missions in this game are short and incredibly restricted. I would actually say this game is a huge step back in terms of mission and level design. Some of the levels are so excruciatingly slow that dying feels so incredibly annoying. Because the missions are so short, there are no checkpoints, but the missions are also long enough that dying feels awful because you have to do the same boring ass mission all over again because you died to too many enemies being on the field all at once and not being able to take care of them. I think that this game would have benefited a lot more if there were actual checkpoints in the game and the missions were more connected. For example, instead of 4 quarters with 5 missions in each, maybe keep the 4 quarters but just 2 missions in each, with the missions being a bit longer. It would have made it feel more like an actual Halo game. One standout mission I do have to say though is the last mission of the game. You do some defending, but you're constantly running around and having to defend scientists while trying to keep them alive as well as yourself. Having to connect the conduit thing to the system or whatever while getting shot at is fucking great and is much better than the final boss fight that they had at the end of Halo Spartan Assault. So now that I'm done talking about the gameplay, let's talk about the story, which starts with the invasion of New Mombasa in Halo 2, but instead of playing as ODSTs, you play as a Spartan, which is kind of stupid. You would think that you would have just played as ODSTs, but that would mean they would have to make new character models, and that's too hard for these guys. Anyway, the mission involves a group of ODSTs heading down to New Mombasa and grabbing a Forerunner artifact called the Conduit. Well, after fighting around the city a bit and safely securing the artifact, the slip space rupture takes place and kills all the ODSTs protecting it. Something I actually kind of like about Halo in general is how much impact this single slip space jump in New Mombasa has on multiple Halo games. Not just this game, but Halo 3 ODST as well. It's the inciting conflict of the game. Just a small thing I wanted to point out. Well, the Conduit actually teleports away and is eventually discovered on the Gamma Halo ring. Now, your goal as a Spartan now is to recover it. After doing some digging around, it's eventually discovered that the Conduit can teleport and can also teleport Prometheans all over the place. So the Covenant want it. The Covenant shortly arrive at Gamma Halo, and the Covenant's plan is to steal the Conduit and use the Promethean troops to take control of Gamma Halo and attack Earth. The Covenant get their hands on the Conduit and Prometheans start spawning all over the place. You run through Gamma Halo and eventually recover the Conduit, but when you head back to Earth and head to a city called New Phoenix, the Conduit reactivates and Covenant and Promethean troops start flooding the city. I also thought this was kind of dumb and really lazy, but New Phoenix used the exact same models, like area models, as New Mombasa. Whatever. The mission is to take down the Conduit by closing the portals by using some device in a UNSC base. Once the Conduit is put in the UNSC device, all the portals close and the Conduit teleports away once again, not really knowing where it went this time. That's basically the whole story. It's nothing amazing. It's not nearly as bad as Halo Spartan Assault. It's simply fine. I mean, what, you want me to say something more insightful? The story isn't amazing. There's no characters to attach to, no moments that stand out, nothing that really stands out in my mind at least. There's nothing so excruciatingly bad that it made me want to stop, but there's also nothing that really made me want to figure out what was going on or kept me driving towards the ending. It felt like the first draft of a script that you usually build onto, but there was no building at all. They just went with this anyway.
That elite has the conduit. Take him out.
The music and audio, just like the first game, is incredibly boring. Again, it's not Halo Spartan Assault bad with that shit-ass yodeling, it's just uninspired background music, which really sucks because Halo's music is fucking incredible. The bombastic tracks elevate what's going on screen. Music to follow loss, reflection, courage, war. There's a whole lot of Halo music to choose from with so much interesting shit, but it's just a whole lot of nothing. I don't think anyone will even remember a single track from this game at all, and will be forgotten within minutes of listening to if you even paid attention to it at all in the first place. The audio itself sounds like a Halo game, which is not a surprise, so no issues there. The lack of an energy sword sound is still in this game as well, which I thought was kind of funny. I don't know if I would call that an audio issue or a bug, but I think it leads perfectly into bugs, which there actually aren't a whole lot in this game. A lot of the bugs that are in the first game have actually been fixed here. I wish they didn't exist in either game, but at least they're not reappearing in this one. Most of the bugs I ran into had to do with enemies getting stuck on shit and minor audio issues, but nothing really to make note of. There is this one thing though where you go to the Assault Ops page, and when you look at it and you go to weekly challenges, there's nothing there. I don't know if this is a bug or not, or they just stopped updating it. I don't know. I'm just gonna add it here anyway, just in case it is a bug. In conclusion, Halo Spartan Strike is the McDonald's of Halo games. Nothing too awful, Nothing great either. It's inoffensive, bland, and boring, but you kind of expect that. There are good twin-stick shooters out there. If anyone has ever played Ruiner or something like Dead Ops Arcade, there's a lot of fun to be had and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool concepts and expansion that can be made onto it, but 343 and Vanguard Games went with the safest option possible and released a project that people would forget within no time. In terms of a video game, it's fine, but as a Halo game, it's fucking horrible. And I think the biggest thing that's holding this game back is the level design. I think the level design is genuinely atrocious and not fun at all. I would much rather play through Halo Spartan Assault than play through Halo Spartan Strike again. And I never thought I would be saying that, but it's true. Although I think this is a more competent game, I think I would genuinely enjoy Halo Spartan Assault more. And while it's gotta feel good to say, yeah, I worked on a Halo game, it's gotta at least be a little bit embarrassing when people find out that it wasn't Halo 3 or Halo 4, it was a Halo game made for the Microsoft phone.